By using this Allen key to adjust the tilt on your saddle, you can unlock free speed on your bike. It sounds too good to be true, doesn't it? But I'm going to show you the supporting evidence for this simplest of performance hacks. Saddle tilt, along with saddle height and fore-aft adjustment, makes up the trifecta of saddle positioning requirements. I've previously discussed setting saddle height, which you can see in this video, link in the description below. And I've also been through a comprehensive discussion about setting saddle fore and aft, which you can see in this video, also linked below. So, saddle tilt. Traditionally, a road bike saddle has been set up horizontal or tipped slightly nose down, and this was believed to be the best angle to ride with. I've generally recommended and set my bike fit clients at a 0 to 2 degrees nose down saddle angle, and this has universally worked very well. The logic behind this is simple. Fundamentally, a flat saddle with 0 degrees of tilt is the most stable platform to ride on, where gravity and friction will tend to keep your pelvis fixed in position. There is the least effort required to maintain your body position, to propel the bike, and the lowest likelihood of overuse injuries developing. A slight downward tilt can help with aerodynamic positioning, forward roll of the pelvis, and reduction of front of pelvis pressure, but we are usually only talking about just a few degrees here. If you ride a lot in the drops or have a large saddle to handlebar height differential, then at least some downward tilt of your saddle may be wise. If your actual saddle top is not flat and has either a small or significant curve in it, then this complicates matters somewhat. Actually, more than somewhat. It's one of the reasons why I prefer to ride with a flat saddle, and I recommend flat saddles to my clients. We'll come back to this issue shortly. When your saddle is tilted too far down at the front, it's generally understood that this will encourage your pelvis to slide forwards and can lead to increased pressure at the front of the perineum as you are sitting on the thinnest and least supported part of the saddle. It might feel like you're actually sliding forwards off the saddle and increase the load on your arms and shoulders to push you back up. This extra load can increase hand contact pressure and create pain, tingling and numbness there. There will be more quadriceps effort required to hold your pelvis position on the saddle. This can lead to quicker quadriceps fatigue and can cause knee strain, particularly at the patellofemoral joint. On the other hand, here's what can happen if your saddle is tilted upwards. Your pelvis can start to slide backwards with gravity. The raised saddle nose can apply more direct pressure at the front of the perineum. You'll then likely start to rotate your pelvis backwards to avoid this extra pressure at the front. And this then increases the flexion in the spine and can lead to lower back pain. This then flows on to feeling too stretched out and the handlebars feeling too far away. We'll start to see an increase in hamstring activity as this muscle pulls us forward on the saddle, matched by a reduction in quads activity and overall a loss of power. And if you are actually sliding backward, you might start to feel thigh rub and chafing against the wider part of the saddle edge. Now, to present a balanced discussion, I've again perused the internet to see what other experts and online commentators say about setting saddle tilt. Firstly, we have Phil Burt, former physio and bike fitter for Team Sky and Team Great Britain. Burt says that the saddle nose should never be angled up. This acts as a block to forward pelvic rotation. It makes it harder to reach the handlebars. It increases the curvature in the spine, and this is likely to lead to lower back pain. He says that most saddles are designed to be used either flat or slightly nose down, and his ideal saddle angle is somewhere between 0 to 4 degrees. If you have discomfort in the perineal region or hot spots on saddle pressure mapping, then slightly more downward angulation can be beneficial. Bird is definitely a proponent of having some downward saddle tilt, and he campaigned to have the UCI rules changed in 2015. Before this, the maximum saddle tilt that was allowed on a road bike was 2.5 degrees nose down, and the rules were then relaxed to allow for a 9-degree nose down position. He states that this change made a huge difference to the Great Britain women's cycling team's saddle-related injuries in the 2016 Olympics. James Thomas, who is a UK-based bike fitter appearing on the Cade Media channel, says that he wants the sitting area of a saddle to be flat. He says never adjust the saddle pitch away from horizontal. If you're having saddle-related issues, then look at other variables of the bike fit because they are more likely to be the problem. He says that if you have a curved saddle, then the central portion should be horizontal. Neil Stanbury, who is an Aussie physio and bike fitter, says that if you have a flat type of saddle, you should make sure that the front half is always set to horizontal to start with, and then make minor tweaking adjustments from there. He says if you have one of these significantly curved saddles with a cradle area in the middle, then you want to have the front of the saddle set at about 13 millimeters or half an inch below the rear of the saddle. However, he acknowledges that there's always a degree of trial and error involved. John Wyeth from the Bike Fit Advisor channel says always start with your saddle horizontal for the sake of pelvic stability. If you have a curved saddle, then the front and the back should be level. If the saddle has a small kick up at the back, then make sure to get the front part level. What is the simplest way to achieve the angle that you want on your saddle? I suggest that you use a chopping board, the Measure app on your iPhone or whatever phone you got, or failing that, use a digital spirit level which has numerical angle readouts. You must use a torque wrench when tightening saddle clamps and adjust to the specs provided, otherwise you will compromise your components, your safety and your bike warranty. So when I said before about using an Allen key, that was a dramatic oversimplification. When measuring and adjusting saddle angle, here are a few things to keep in mind. Make sure that you feel comfortable in the drops as well as on the hoods and the bar tops. If you spend a lot of time riding in the drops, then you may need a little bit more nose down angle. Be aware that your saddle may flex under your body weight. If the saddle is positioned fully forwards on the clamp, then it may tend to sag nose down as more of your body weight is in front of the clamp. And if the saddle is positioned fully rearwards, then it may tend to flex nose up as more of your body weight is behind the saddle clamp. If you're near the maximum setting of your seat tube height, you may get a little bit of backward bend of your seat post, and this is going to result in a slight nose up saddle angle. Saddle tilt may actually change as you tighten the bolts to torque specifications. It is really annoying. Make sure you check your saddle angle after you've tightened the bolts. And as with all elements of bike fitting and saddle positioning, make sure you test it outside before you finalise your position. Now, a quick word about curved saddles. I'm on record as saying I don't like them. I tried a Seller SMP with an almighty curve and I just didn't enjoy riding with it. I think you can see from the other bike fitters quoted previously that there is a lot of conjecture and confusion about how you should set these saddles up. Even the Seller SMP website has how to fit instructions that include a self-selection margin of 35 millimeters of nose up or nose down tilt. That equates to 15 degrees. 15 degrees. I have never seen a fitting guide for any other type of saddle that says set it somewhere between 4 degrees of nose up and 11 degrees of nose down. Now, if you are a fan of these saddles, I am happy for you. But in my experience, they are finicky to set up, and in my humble opinion, they would not suit the majority of cyclists. But it's just my opinion. So, what's changed? What's new in the world of saddle tilt? If you stop watching the video here, you'll be well served by the information presented so far. This method of setting saddle angle has worked for cyclists for many years. However, there are some juicy new research findings that you might want to know about because with just a twist of an Allen key or a torque wrench, you might make yourself faster on your bike. Recent research has focused on the physiological changes that occur during uphill cycling and how we might take advantage of this new knowledge. In a 2012 review of uphill cycling physiology, researchers Fonda and Sarabon reported that in seated climbing, at a very steep 20% gradient, during the pedal stroke, there is a shortened duration of quadricep activation and a lengthened duration of hamstring activation. They also showed that at this 20% incline, there was a reduced intensity of quadricep firing and an increased intensity of gluteus maximus firing. So in summary, for seated climbing, on these very steep gradients, the quadricep muscles work less hard and for shorter periods of time, the hamstring muscles work for longer and the glutes work harder. Then, in a follow-up study, these same authors found that if they angled the saddle down 20%, which is roughly 10 degrees, to negate the 20% gradient of the incline, that the neuromuscular changes that they had seen previously were almost completely eliminated. In other words, on a very steep slope, if the saddle is angled steeply downwards, it corrects the altered muscle activity. In addition, in an unpublished study, Fonda found that the same adjusted saddle angle on a 20% gradient reduced oxygen consumption by 6% and reduced upper body muscle activity by between 30 and 60% when compared with a standard parallel saddle position. In other words, the lungs need less air and the upper body can relax more. Building on this, a 2021 study paper found that recreational cyclists riding on a 14% gradient, which is approximately 8 degrees, who had their saddle tilted down 8 degrees to negate the incline, achieved a metabolic gross efficiency improvement of 1.4% compared with the standard parallel saddle position. The study authors said that they believe that this improvement in efficiency was due to less work being done by the upper body to hold the pelvis and the body in place, in other words, stopping the cyclist from sliding off the back of the seat. They then went on to extrapolate that if a top elite cyclist in the saddle adjusted position could be 1.4% more efficient on Alpe d'Huez, they would finish 26 seconds faster, and a fit amateur doing the same could gain 61 seconds. That's a free minute on Alpe d'Huez. Coming back to the professional peloton, there is lots of online chatter about how Tadej Pogačar adjusts his bike fit and particularly his saddle position depending on the day's racing in front of him. He and his coaches seem to have learned that there are gains to be made from simple adjustments such as saddle tilt on a day-by-day basis. How does this all help the average rider? At the start of this video, I pointed out the many disadvantages to having your saddle angled too far nose down. But now we see that there is good evidence that a tilted down saddle has great performance advantages when you are riding uphill. So it makes sense to me that if you're tackling a specific climb, such as Alpe d'Huez or the Stelvio, and your goal is simply to get from the bottom to the top as quickly as possible, then setting your saddle so it's going to be horizontal on the climb will probably help. However, if you are training or racing on mixed inclines, then you would need to make your own judgment as to how much tilting your saddle down might help you. If you're prone to arm and shoulder strain, if you get numbness in your hands, if you get knee pain, or if you get early onset of quads fatigue, then this may not be a good strategy for you. However, if you are a more resilient cyclist, then it might be worth giving it a go. Remember though, what goes up must come down. And we don't yet have the same sort of information about how a downward angled saddle affects riders while they're cycling downhill. Hopefully we'll have some data on this soon. So, do you prefer a traditional approach to setting your saddle angle, or would you give this extreme saddle tilt concept a try in the hunt for climbing gains? Let me know in the comments below.